Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Media Matters for Anfield Index. Maybe we should just predict a bad run of results in the future because another victory, this time in the FA Cup, a clean sheet as well. Liverpool are through to the fifth round. We'll find out tonight who they get drawn against. There's things going off the pitch with contract talk. There is plenty to get into with this one, but it's a bit more of a positive vibe than it's been in recent times. And I'm joined as ever by the renowned and the respected David Lynch. And David, I suppose before we get into the Brighton game, because there's quite a few bits to talk about, we can't definitely say a corner's turned, but there is a bit more of a positive vibe, it's fair to say right now.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I think some people who kind of have been, very critical of the manager, and I myself have been at times, totally, of course, I think rightly so. You are allowed to say when it's getting better, and when you're seeing better trends, and when you're seeing better underlying performance, and it's all coming together in that way. And I think we just are definitely seeing that. I think the 10-game trend looks good. I think. There's still been some defeats and some poor performances, and I was fairly scathing of the Manchester City performance. I thought Liverpool could have been much better than they were. But, like I say, the 10-game trend is looking good. We're seeing a few goals scored in some games, some clean sheets starting to roll in. Right. There are a lot of positive signs in there. And, it doesn't mean that we say, maybe a corner's being turned means you think that everything is solved and everything's okay and Liverpool are going to win the league next year or they're going to cruise into the top four. You don't have to kind of approach it in that way. What we're saying is the trend recently is towards positivity and things getting better in terms of performance and outcomes. Let's see what happens next, because of course we know that, if they win the next three, then wow, definitely the trend is positive. If they lose the next three, then a lot of the good work we've seen in the last 10 games or so is maybe being undone a little bit. So, you've just got to kind of take it as it comes, really. We spoke about this kind of last bit of the season being really important to the manager in terms of his future. And, it's fine, I think, to kind of sit back and see what happens, try and spot the trends as they emerge and say whether they're good or not, or whether you're starting to see improvements in certain aspects of the performance. And I just think undoubtedly we are in the most recent tranche of fixtures. But, of course, as I say, it could turn negative over the next three. It could get even better. So we've just got to kind of keep our powder dry a little bit and see what's happening and try and spot the trends as they're emerging. But it's difficult to do so. But I just think there's no doubt that things are getting a little bit better recently. Let's see how much better they can get.
And we should rewind to Saturday when we talk about things getting better. I mean, it's an interesting one, this, because there's plenty of positives which we'll get into, but just being guarded as well. The XG wasn't that different, and obviously we have the penalty, so that helps it inflate that somewhat. Brighton had chances. Alisson had to make a few saves as well, and in fact, they were probably the better team for the first half an hour. That doesn't mean it's all negative, throughout that, but still work to be done, you could see on Saturday.
Yeah, so, it's definitely not perfect. I think we all acknowledge that. So kind of, I didn't love the fact that the first kind of 15, 20 minutes, maybe 15, probably more, but Brighton came out the blocks and kind of just dominated possession from the off. I would have liked to see Liverpool disrupt them a bit more in that period. I don't know. I need to kind of watch it back, but I felt Liverpool started to get better at winning the ball back in higher areas as the game went on a little bit. And I don't know whether they maybe started the game with that kind of +1 at the back that they do like a lot of the time. But then certainly when I started to notice they were winning the ball more frequently, we were without a doubt going man-to-man in the press. And I just do think Liverpool are better when they do that. I do think they're more capable of creating turnovers, and I think they don't always need to leave that +1. So I need to watch it back, as I say, to see whether that shift was linked to moving away from a +1 and just going man-to-man. But they were definitely, when they did start to win the ball, they were man-to-man. So that was an improvement and a tweak that they made kind of on the fly. But as you say, you would have liked to see Liverpool start the game better. That's still something I think to maybe work on a little bit. In terms of the expected goals, by the way, Brighton pile on quite a bit at the end. I think the last shot of the games in the 95th minute is worth like 0.2 expected goals. So it's a big chunk of what Brighton get. And I think they would have been, I think they have maybe the kind of last 5 or 6 shots, which you would expect at 3-0 down, that's going to be how it goes. So that kind of inflates their XG tally. So I was actually kind of more positive on what Liverpool did. I mean, you're still, in the lap of the gods at times when that one deflects through and Curtis Jones it slips and Brighton have a chance there. Early in the season, that finds the back of the net. And it's not, it was just kind of a comedy of errors, really. Like, not anything Liverpool could have massively controlled that could have gone against them. So it's not, as I say, it's not absolutely perfect. But we let's be honest, from where Liverpool were this season at points, looking for perfect, they don't have to be title challenging good. They just have to be much better. They have to just be kind of half decent to get through to the end of the season, to achieve their aims, which is to push for the FA Cup, to push in the Champions League, and to finish in the top 4 or 5. And I think that latter one is the most important out of any of them, quite frankly, because it's the most, the Champions League, it's a lot of things have got to go for them. FA Cup, it depends, the luck of the draw sometimes. But I think in terms of long-term health and where they need to be, I think top 4 or 5 is absolutely crucial. And we know they don't have to be perfect to get there. They just have to be a lot better than they were. And I think that's, without question. As I say, I'm not saying that things are they're absolutely incredible recently, but the trend towards being good enough to get in that top 4 or 5, we're starting to see that. And that is what is encouraging. But of course, as I say, they've got to keep that going now.
Yeah, they've got to keep it going. And one player that you hope keeps things going, because it's not been the greatest of seasons for Mo Salah by any means, but it just felt like, it was great to see a goal and an assist back as well, but the overall performance just looked livelier, beating his man. There was a lot more positives from Mo Salah this week.
Yeah, I thought he had Kadioglu on toast time and time again, and he looked quicker than him as well, which again is, people talk about his pace, and he's maybe just lost a little tiny bit, but he's still really quick. So, he doesn't quite create that little extra bit of separation that he used to, but I think he can get on the outside of someone without question. And, we saw that a few times, few dribbles in there. Some really good moments of kind of playmaking. He gets an assist with just a brilliant touch, and then of course, the goal is a penalty, but he dispatches it, which is what he needs to do. And again, much like the team, I'll say this over and over again, doesn't have to be perfect. He doesn't have to be Mo Salah of last season. He just has to be better than what we maybe saw in that first part of the season, really. So that's, I think that's definitely what we saw against Brighton. I thought his overall performance was very, very good. And again, you're not saying everything's perfect, but, you just take it as encouragement that things are at least moving in the right direction. And if Salah can sustain that, if the team can sustain that, if Alexis McAllister can sustain that, there's another one. That's really good news for Liverpool, I think.
And a player that we've talked about before who also deserves mentioning, I'm not even sure we're talking about getting better. Just Milos Kerkez is maybe, I think, just starting to get recognised a little bit for what he's doing. Another great performance, but importantly, maybe the final ball for that assist for Curtis Jones. We've not always seen that. So just even added something more to his game.
Yeah, I think, he has. He's been playing well for a long time now. And I think, people really kind of got onto it in this game. But I think we've spoken about it on a weekly basis for a while now, that he's been playing really well. So, but what he did add, as you say, and that's the thing, I think, is an area that kind of, I did a scouting report on him before he came in. And one of the areas I kind of said, we need to see a bit of a jump here, a bit of an improvement is output. At the top end of the field. And it's interesting, I did one when he was first linked and one just before he signed, and you could see he'd kind of climbed the expected threat table in that time. So he was already at Bournemouth. You were seeing steps forward in terms of what he was able to do in the final third, and it's just now about kind of continuing that at Liverpool. And we haven't seen enough from him in terms of creativity, but that cross that he puts in at the weekend is exactly what, when he did create goals at Bournemouth, we were a bit like that, kind of hammered, swung in, low crosses for people to tap in. So, I'd like to see people kind of gamble a bit more on his crossing and know that he's going to put it there as well. Maybe it's a bit of not just him, it's what his teammates are expecting him to do. rather than the kind of more floaty ones that Robertson will put in. They're not maybe as expecting how he will put the ball in the box. So maybe it's a bit of that. But yeah, that's a development I would like to see kind of continue, really, because, if he adds that threat as well with everything else that he's, very good at, then then he's really, really going to be up there as kind of one of the best left backs in the league.
Really, yeah, absolutely brilliant on Saturday. Although still not the leading Hungarian in the team. I mean, we'll talk about Dominik Szoboszlai as an individual shortly, but that second goal, the one where Mo cushions it and Szoboszlai just dispatches it into the top left corner, I'm struggling to think of a better team goal this season, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, some of the football in general was really good, but that was a really, really stunning goal. And again, we've had conversations several times throughout this season about what is possible from an aesthetics point of view in this league. Is it possible to be a good attacking side anymore? And I think we have in some of the recent games seen some really good attacking football, and that was, as you say, I think possibly the best move of the season so far. I mean, just beautifully put together. Real movement around the place. Everybody kind of stretching out to create space for others, and then just one touch in behind, one touch for the finish. Absolutely brilliant goal. And so again, part of the development, and this is less important than the actual kind of underlying stuff and the actual outcomes, of course, but we do want to see an attractive football side as well, if possible. And so to see that, I think again it was another area for encouragement, really.
It was, yeah. We heard about how we bought, technical players, all the skill. It is what you expect to see a little bit with these boys. And I mean, Dominik Szoboszlai, I'm sure, will be keen to remind Arne Slot and everyone just not how good he is. And Mo and Arne Slot talked about him being world class afterwards, and some of his numbers there are brilliant. He'll just be reminding them and going, "Hey, did you see me in midfield this time and not at right back?" Won't he?
Yeah, he doesn't like playing at right back. I mean, he said it outright to us after games previously, and I can see why, because he's so good in midfield and Liverpool need him there. And the only criticism, and I think some of it was over the top of it last season, really, that he got was around kind of output and what he was doing in terms of providing goals and assists. Well, I think he's answered that question this season. He's kind of taken a leap forward, hasn't he, and been absolutely brilliant. So great to see him continue that. And yeah, just no doubting that he's a world-class footballer who's coming into his peak years now, and Liverpool are going to hopefully reap the rewards of that. So yeah, brilliant performance, brilliantly finished off. Let's try and keep him in midfield as frequently as often.
Yeah, you've got to hope that. And probably a person that played the right back role and just gave everyone a timely reminder. Curtis Jones talked about it afterwards, saying 3 very good goals, clean sheet as well. That's all we can ask for. And talked about how he'll always do a job anywhere for the team. I think he was pretty tidy at right back in this one.
Yeah, I thought he played well. I thought Liverpool's build-up was really good. I think that's another one of the areas actually been really encouraged by recently, that I think is getting better. But he was, again, in this game, really helpful in that, in terms of just getting them out, takes the ball anywhere, never really looks flustered. And then again, the thing you get from him is he doesn't give the ball away and he wins his duels, and he did that again, and he can do it at right back. And then, of course, crashing the box to score a goal from right fullback as well. Really nice to see that. And actually, there were occasions as well where you saw Szoboszlai drop into right back and Curtis Jones kind of move forward. And that was quite nice, the fact that they're both comfortable to do that, and they can that could confuse Brighton a little bit. So that worked really well. And again, made my feelings clear about Curtis Jones. I think it's absolutely imperative that he stays, and Liverpool make the case that he should stay. So hopefully get him in the team. Hopefully, maybe there's a case while we're still waiting on Frimpong here to kind of keep him in the team there at right back. I hope so, because I just want to make sure that Curtis Jones sticks around, to be honest.
Yeah, and Nikolai there saying great thing about him, switch play, which creates more space for the left-hand side. I suppose the only annoying thing is Rio Ngamoa should have had a 4th, shouldn't he, really? That was a tiny little finish into the bottom corner as well. That was annoying.
Yeah, do you know, it's interesting. I mean, I'm pretty much a VAR abolitionist. I would get rid of it tomorrow, to be honest. But you do see in moments like that where, that would have been nice for him to get that first team goal under his belt again, and to just boost his confidence. And it's so well finished. I mean, we've seen Gakpo have a bit of trouble with kind of cutting in down that side and frustrating people this season. I thought Ngamoa did that but much, much quicker in terms of getting the ball out of his feet and not giving the defender a chance to get in, and brilliantly tucked away as well. So I hope he takes it forward as a goal, because it was. And as I say, with the VAR thing, you do see the downside sometimes of not having it, which is a legitimate goal getting chalked off, which could have been important for Liverpool. I watched the Newcastle Aston Villa game over the weekend, and wow, that was a really strong case for VAR as well. So, sometimes it's, there are benefits to it being there, and one of those would have been that Engamo would have got another Liverpool goal to his name.
Yeah, that was shocking decisions, but a lot to like, a lot to be positive around, and a lot of individual performances to be happy about. So as we look at some of the off-the-field matters, there's a few bits. I mean, contracts is going to come up and general things, but one thing that really struck me, I wanted to ask you about this, was a few flagged this in Arne Slot's post-match press conference. That statement, more and more players are now capable of playing at this intensity or level every 3 days. Now we see more and more the quality that we have. I suppose a couple of things that stand out for me is like, are we now well positioned with the strategy to be good to the business end of the season? But also I'm thinking, why is it taking till mid-February to be ready to play 2 games a week?
Yeah, I'd be interested to know the answer to that as well. To be honest, it's one of the things. So it's something he's spoken about a lot. So and I don't have any reason to doubt him on this, because I think we've all seen the performances where Liverpool have kind of played a couple of games in a week, and in one of them looked absolutely terrible in terms of the level of intensity, or dropped away, and they've conceded so many late goals that have had a crucial effect on games. Then, I think we are seeing evidence that he's absolutely right. There is a physical deficit there. Now, the question is, why is that? So, I think with the new signings, the ones who've come from different leagues, you can completely understand that. Fiat and Ekitike to come from the Bundesliga intensity to go Premier League, Champions League is a very different challenge to Bundesliga, Champions League, or whatever level they were playing at in Europe. So, I can kind of understand that. And even Kerkez, he has played in the Premier League, but he's not been playing as many midweeks. So he's had to kind of get used to that. So that can be a slow process and can be difficult for them. But I think for the rest of the team, you'd maybe ask why that is the case. Why have so many of the team kind of struggle with that? This is nothing new to Ryan Gravenberch, to Dominik Szoboszlai, to McAllister, to any player you want to mention, really. So, why is this seemingly something that has infected the entire team? I don't really know or understand. And, one of the things that comments I see a lot around kind of, the mitigation of the Jota situation, and I think without question there's an emotional kind of impact of that we can't quantify, and we'll never really know how much of an effect that's had on the season in terms of the drain that's put on the players, albeit I don't doubt that it's hugely significant. But one of the things I think people have kind of settled into saying as a defence recently is kind of, well, they've had no pre-season. Well, I don't actually think that's true, to be honest. I think I'll be, and this is not to kind of play down the impact. As I say, the emotional impact would have been huge, but there's been kind of a leap for some reason to kind of saying that there hasn't been a pre-season because of the Jota situation. Now, I know that there was a slight delay to pre-season, but we're only talking a few days, and they did give the players the option to kind of train if you want to, or train if you don't. I'm not so sure that was taken up massively, and I look at the fitness of Dom Szoboszlai this season. He's looked absolutely incredible. I don't think Van Dijk's had any issues. I think, you look at Luis Diaz going out to Bayern. Nobody's talking about he's had a difficult pre-season, and, he went in that process. So I don't really think that's true, to be honest. So what I'm trying to drive at really is I'm really interested to know what's been the cause for that, really. Why so many players have kind of struggled pre-season wise, as I say, because the ones who came from different leagues, I totally get it. The ones who, in Kerkez's case, have kind of the workload has upped massively. But a few of the players who've kind of been there, done that, have lacked intensity as well. So I'd be interested to know why that is, to be honest, because I don't think that's immediately obvious, and I don't think it's personally, doesn't seem to me, and nobody said it, and I think it will be a point that Liverpool would make a point of getting out there as well if this were the case, that pre-season had been completely messed up. by something outside the control. So why that is the case is a bit of a mystery at the moment, really. It's probably something I should do some digging into, actually.
Yeah, will be interesting ahead of the presser on Friday. And I suppose, speaking of the presser on Friday, we kind of knew this was coming anyway, but Arne Slot did update around injury for Endo. Seems it's a bad one, but based on what he says, there is still hope that we could see him before the end of the season, isn't there?
Yeah, so I had a conversation on Friday with someone who's kind of close to the player, and they said that, we still don't exactly know because the swelling is so bad around it that they've got to let it subside now. I wonder whether they've maybe given it the weekend. Maybe we'll see a scan today, so we might learn a little bit more about that. So I'll check in on that. They just know it's not great. I was told, don't think there's any kind of fracture involved at the moment. So that gives him a chance of coming back before the end of the season. I think if it was a fracture, you're looking at something like an Isak situation where it's a good few months. And, I don't think he's going to be back straight away for that reason. But I think that's why they believe he's got a chance. But they've got to scan it. So, maybe that will be today, and we'll maybe find out a little bit more about that today, hopefully. But yeah, not as bad as it could have been, but not great either. So I don't think we'll be seeing him soon.
Fingers crossed we get as best as possible news on that. And you mentioned a player there, and obviously it was good to see some of the photos in case anyone missed that. Alexander Isak back at the AXA doing some rehab work, as it were. I think the one thing that maybe surprised everyone, and I suppose it's how much truth in this, forget Graham Potter's the interim Sweden boss, and they've got the playoff coming up, said that he's not ruling Alexander Isak out of that for March. You wonder how much of a surprise is that to Liverpool, though?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I think I've written this maybe or said it somewhere previously, but when he first got the injury, the talk was, and I'd heard that kind of mid-March was the aim for him. So I've not heard anything since. So again, timelines around injuries are difficult. So he may, maybe a little bit slower than that, might be, kind of a little bit quicker or whatever. So March is definitely, I think, when we might see him again in the Liverpool shirt, certainly getting back into the squad. Now, I'm not sure on the timing of the international break in March. Just having a look now. So that's kind of, so it's the back end of March. So the question will be, I think he might be back and fit for that. Or certainly around Liverpool's squad. So there's a big chance that he could do that if the timeline hasn't shifted at all. But then the question is, of course, would Liverpool allow him to go having just come back? Yeah. Now, they are crucial games for Sweden, aren't they, to get them to the World Cup? So the question is whether Liverpool would allow it. Sweden did them a few solids, didn't they, with Isak, in terms of not playing him in games that didn't matter. So maybe that will influence them a little bit. It'll be interesting, but I think that's legitimate. I think he does have a chance for that because, as I say, I was told previously that mid-March was a realistic aim for him to be back around the squad and back in training. So yeah, let's see how it plays out.
Yeah, March before you know it. And off the field stuff as well, we've got to talk about this because this was part of the embargo, and it feels like a full court press, I'm going to call it, by all in red, because Arne Slot was asked about Ibu and said, we are in talks with him, so that tells you what we want. It's clear we'd like him to stay. Negotiations are ongoing. Let's see where that ends. We wouldn't be in negotiations if we didn't want him to stay. And then even Virgil talked about it in the mix zone, saying, obviously, I want him to stay. He's an important figure on the pitch. That's what everyone sees. But off the pitch as well, he's one of the leaders. He's outstanding in my eyes and a world-class centre-back. It's almost gone from, we don't talk about contracts in press conferences, a bit Fight Club style, to everyone's trying to twist Ibu's arm a little bit. Is there encouragement there?
Yeah, so again, I had a conversation last week that I think encouraged me in that from the kind of players' side of things, that they're still kind of having discussions, and that was in the last couple of weeks or so. So it's not completely dead. That's not to say that it's going to be a positive outcome, but I really don't get the impression from the players' side that he's got in his head somewhere he wants to go and he's no interest in signing for Liverpool. They're definitely listening and talking, and that is ongoing. And I think actually you probably get a sense of that from what Van Dijk is saying, and that he's not shutting the door there at all. And, nobody seems resigned to anything. So I think there's a chance. Now, again, whether that chance turns into anything, we'll have to see. And I have to say, I think in previous podcasts over the last few weeks, I've been hugely discouraged until I've had this conversation this week. So I've gone from thinking there's no chance because we're not really hearing much to I've heard something that makes me think there is a chance, and that there's a possibility that Liverpool will get this done, and the player wants it to happen. And as I say, the fact that discussions are actually not being halted yet, or certainly hadn't over the last couple of weeks, to me suggests there's a possibility there. Whether it'll happen or not is kind of in the lap of the gods now. We see how that turns out, but I'm more encouraged than I was a couple of weeks ago. That's for sure.
Yeah, which is a lot more positive because it felt almost inevitable. And I was going to ask you about the market because Upamecano at Bayern signed his deal this week, or just gone, didn't he, last week? And I mean, you looked at that deal. Suggestions are from various German reports that over 270 grand a week, a 50 million pound sort of loyalty renewal bonus, those types of things. Do you think Liverpool will be looking at the market and thinking, where are we going to get top class Premier League proven? How much are we going to pay? That might just make them bend a little bit with Konate and his demands.
Yeah, I would hope so. Because I think that's always a factor for Liverpool as well. Is like they don't just say, "Should we get this deal done? Do we need to keep this player?" They're like, "Well, what can we do alternatively? Yeah. Like this player might be out there. He's available for this money, these wages, and his numbers look like this, and this." And the scouts really like him. Is he better than this? So it's almost like a kind of comparison. And we've spoken about that in the kind of terms of the manager as well. Is like that's how it'll come down to it. Is like it's not just yes or no. It's like yes or X, Y, or Z. So it's kind of looking at that. So that's how they'll approach it. So and I think you're right. I think there's a case there that they'll kind of look at it and think, he knows what he's doing here. He's adapted. He's coming into kind of peak years now for a centre half. Injury record's been much better recently. And what's out there, like if Bayern are having to pay Upamecano that kind of money, and Upamecano, I think I'm right in saying, was coming right to the end of his deal as well. Yeah. So, encouragement there again that this can be done. So, it's an interesting one. I would love Liverpool to keep him because I just think to kind of jump from him to Xhaka starting a load of games next season, it's another thing where you go, are they going to be able to like immediately challenge for the title? If that's the case, I think that's, I think that's going to be really difficult. I mean, the comment says it's spot on there. It's like, and they're going to need the continuity as well because there's so much change that's already going to be enforced upon them again. So I really hope that they can get it done. And as I say, more encouraged over the last week or so than I have been for a long time that something might actually happen now. So let's see, though. It's nothing's guaranteed, unfortunately.
We'll see what develops on that one. One from the embargo as well. I'm not sure how encouraging this one is, though, about Curtis Jones by Arne Slot. He is a Liverpool player, and I think I said a few times he's a very good player. But the only line where we don't have issues is midfield. And he's been playing the last 18 months more than he ever has in his time at Liverpool. So that tells you a lot about the development he's made. But he is also in competition with a lot of players that I like and have done very well for this club. I mean, you can't pick up on every single word, but he sounds more bullish, almost more determined about Konate. And Curtis Jones is like, yeah, I'd like to keep him, but maybe he's showing his honest colours that I feel the other midfielders are better. That doesn't strike you with confidence, these ones.
No, I mean, one thing with Jones, I'm pretty kind of down on it where he's got up to and 12 months left and the interest, the fact that he seemed to be open to going there as well, it just doesn't feel great, to be honest. One thing that's maybe kind of salvaging things for me a little bit is like, is this kind of a bit of a growing trend now in football to drive your contract down a little bit lower and get into the last kind of 12, 18 months or so to increase your bargaining power? Because I feel like we're seeing it a lot more. You did it with Van Dijk. We saw it with Salah. Upamecano is a good example there. I think Bayern actually quite frequently are allowing players to get into the last kind of 6 months or so before they sign them up to a new deal. I think with Serge Gnabry not very close and he signed up. They've done it with a couple of other players in recent memory as well. So maybe Jones is part of that trend that we're seeing a little bit. I hope so, because I think the other signs around it are not massively encouraging. So that's the only kind of thing I can pluck out the air and think, okay, maybe that's the case and they will get it sorted out. but as you say, like the mood music around it is not fantastic. And if you ask me now to kind of pick a side of what's going to happen, I'm not massively encouraged he's going to be there next season. But that's just kind of a guess at it, really, more than anything else. So let's see what actually happens. But he do seem a touch more bullish on Konate recently, which is encouraging. But maybe, just maybe, we could get to that point with Jones and he gets into the last 6 months and signs up as well. So yeah, let's see.
Yeah, everyone would love those two to stay. And Reds won't have been too, not ecstatic, not angry, but people will have clocked this, that Dominik Szoboszlai's head coach at Hungary, Marco Rossi, saying since he started playing football as a child, Real Madrid has always been his dream. From the moment Dominik began playing football, he's had one single dream to play for Real Madrid. Now, what you also said in the interview, Rossi, about, happy at Liverpool, could extend there, but people won't like this because the way Dominik Szoboszlai is, people will just put the contract in front of him, getting signed up. But if Real Madrid, very believable is his dream, you won't mind this one getting done, but it feels like this one will go on into next season, maybe.
Yeah, possibly again. If you're Dominik Szoboszlai and you're seeing kind of what the way the land lies in terms of the landscape, rather, I'm aiming at there, of kind of how people are driving the contracts down a little bit and using other clubs' interest as a bargaining chip, then it probably makes a little sense to just drag this on for a while, and particularly if Real Madrid do show any interest. I mean, I wouldn't worry about that one too much because I think there's a lot of players that you could say that was the case for.
Yeah.
And not get overly worried about it. Liverpool still have got the upper hand at the moment in terms of where he's up to in his contract. But you would just love to see them wrap that one up nice and early because he's such an important player. They've done a bit of developing of him. He's really, really hitting the heights now. So fingers crossed he can do because he's such an important player. But it's not one where you kind of, I would say, it's worth getting worried about just yet.
Is it weird in the way it's changed a little bit from defensive midfield? Because we've talked almost from last summer going the way through that this was an important season for the defensive elements, especially centre-back, with Virgil getting older, Konate, who they were going to bring in, Joe Gomez, not getting Mark Gay, going all the way back, to now all of a sudden, Jacket's coming in next summer, we know that for definite, and they could possibly renew Ibu, which would mean they got 5 options at centre-back, to now we're talking about the midfield, because it seems like the entire midfield has 2 years left to go or less, doesn't it? Which is usually sell, renew, or do something. So even midfield might have more question marks than defence right now in the middle.
Yeah, I do wonder whether kind of they're going to get a little bit busy with that in the summer, though. They do seem to like doing contracts over the summer and wrapping that up in the summer's business. It's a kind of way they like to go about it. So, clearly there's a few question marks, as you say, but I think, if you can get a couple of those signed up when the summer comes around, then everyone will feel a lot better about it. And I'm kind of sure that he will as well. If you feel like, it's going to be the case that they will, they're not going to let them all run down. You know what I mean? Maybe a couple will force it themselves, but I think, they'll look to get it wrapped up. And, if they do that, there's still possibilities for exits there as well, and interest that they have in other midfielders as well. So it's so hard to predict this far in advance what that midfield line is going to look like coming into next season. But I think Liverpool are in a comfortable position because it's not like anyone's really, Kerkez is close, but he's not kind of starting every week. They would probably feel like they could do something there to sort it out, as much as I would hate for him to leave. And the rest, they kind of all got a couple of years left, haven't they? So Liverpool are in a fairly strong position to not be left really short and not left scrambling about. But of course, what they do in this summer when it comes up will be important, really.
Yeah, it's just hard to predict at the moment. And in terms of names that have been mentioned this week, Wolves look like, it's inevitable they're going down, but young Matheus Mané's name keeps coming up and a lot of links to Liverpool this week as well. Heard anything on that one at all?
No, can't say I have, to be honest, personally. He's someone who you would be on the radar because of age and profile, and he's homegrown as well. So, lots to like in terms of that. Liverpool do like kind of picking up a player from a relegated side. So, without question, someone that they're keeping an eye on. But it's in terms of that turning into anything serious, I haven't personally heard anything. But I think he makes a lot of sense in terms of, because I think this will be the summer where Chiesa does go. To have kind of a multifunctional forward who, isn't going to be guaranteed starting minutes, but will maybe pick up a few that you can develop. Having a younger profile in that position makes probably a lot more sense, really, than a Chiesa. Yeah. So maybe Liverpool will kind of be able to sell that to him. But I haven't heard anything, but I think they'll be keeping an eye on him, surely.
And one that we know we're keeping an eye on, probably, I don't know if Yan Diomande got a word in his ear, but going back a good few weeks ago, we got that on his live stream, didn't I? I want to play at Anfield. I want to play for Liverpool. I'm a big Liverpool fan. My father's dream is to play for Liverpool, which all of a sudden, yesterday in an interview with Bill, became people made it Liverpool to be my dream club, but it's more my dad's favourite club. I have a lot of respect for Liverpool, but my dream club now is Leipzig. Does that feel more like I best maybe just walk these comments back because it's no guarantee I end up in Liverpool? There's other suitors. Probably an agent's had a word in the ear maybe there.
Yeah, I think it's kind of respect to your club as well, isn't it? To be, if you had a Liverpool play, if Szoboszlai had come out in the mix zone and said he dreamed of Real Madrid, you wouldn't particularly love it. So I guess, I guess he's kind of just rowing back a little bit on that. But again, he's 100% the kind of player that Liverpool are watching, and I know for a fact that Diomande is kind of someone that they're keeping an eye on. But in terms of, he might not even move this summer, by the way. I'm not sure that's 100% guaranteed. We'll kind of keep an eye on that. Whether he's the profile that Liverpool are definitely going to look at. I've spoken before about the fact that 4 or 5 years ago he wouldn't be because he's so young and the output level's not there yet. But they're being forced to kind of move a little bit earlier, so he's interesting from that perspective. But yeah, obviously I don't think it'd be massively difficult to convince him to come if if Liverpool were strongly interested, because obviously I think his dad would be driving it massively, so that would be helpful. But we'll see where things are up to. I don't think anything's like massively heating up around that one yet. He's just a name that people like to talk about because he is being watched, and he's being watched by a lot of clubs, but no early indication yet that Liverpool are like firmly in for him this summer or anything.
We'll see if anything develops on that one. And I don't know if it's right to say it feels like this is completely closed the door on it, but you'd have clocked this. Sam Wallace did a big piece in the Telegraph and obviously, had the ear of someone at Liverpool saying the club admired the way in which Slot has handled the major squad changes in and out the summer, the Salah explosion, the general change in the opposition approach to Liverpool, much greater emphasis from opponents on sitting off deep and disrupting their rhythm when Liverpool were not champions. And also talked about upbeat nature, reluctance to blame others has gone a long way to underpinning the FSG belief that they had the right man last season and they've got the right man this season. Now, people have almost taken that of like, oh, we'll definitely be in charge next season. I'm not sure I'm taking that, but I think we could almost close the door on anything happening to Arne Slot this campaign now.
Oh, yeah, 100%. That's been the case for a while. I think once he got the other side of the PSV game and things started to stabilise a little bit, I don't think there's not been any desire to sack him mid-season whatsoever. At once he kind of came out of that rough spot, because obviously losing 9 and 12, I think if he'd lost another one, we were kind of hearing suggestions that it could have gone differently for him if there would have been a couple more defeats there, certainly. So, but then that kind of case stands. So, it was an interesting piece that obviously well sourced and well written. So I'm not shooting that down, but maybe this is more how people are reading it is the problem here. Is like people will read something like that and go, oh, he's safe. It's like there's nothing's happening, but it's always the case. Like if he loses the next 10, he's going to get sacked. So, I think people want like definitive answers around this stuff, but they just don't exist, which is why it's kind of, that's why, we'll keep banging this drum of like, let's just see what happens. If there's, it's so fragile, this whole thing of like, I get accused sometimes of kind of on YouTube, it's like, oh, you're positive now, but you were negative the other day. But it's like, that's kind of how the season is. Like, I'm not going on videos post-match when they get beaten saying he's got to get sacked right now. And then when they win, going saying he's absolutely incredible and they can never let him go, because the fact is that doesn't touch reality, but equally, you can say, and I think this is how everybody should approach it really, is say, this performance was good. That helps him in terms of building a case for staying around as Liverpool manager. This performance was bad. That does not help his case in any way. And that's just how this rest of the season is going to play out. It's like, we are sat here and things are looking brighter. The 10-game trend is looking pretty good, as I say. I think, what is it, 6 wins, 2 draws, 2 defeats over the last 10. So that's decent. It's not perfect, but it's decent. It's much better than what came before. But had he lost the last 2, then obviously, your 4 wins, 2 draws, 4 defeats, and that looks much worse. And the 10-game trend has gone from being good to being quite bad then. And, again, that doesn't help his case. So this is just what the season is going to be, is, judging performances each on the merits, having a look how the trends are, whether they are positive or negative. And come the end of the season, you will have a full body of evidence of a season that will have either a really a negative feel or a positive feel, and the underlying numbers will tell you a story about whether there was development or there wasn't development, or things got good for a bit and then they got worse again, or there's so much football to be played here that's going to tell us a story. And I think like I say, that's the reason I just don't, as much as FSG and Richard Hughes will be backing the manager for now, and absolutely are. And there's no desire, and I've had this sense for a while, there's no desire to sack the manager mid-season, absolutely. And I agree with that, by the way, at 100%. What happens between now and then is massive. It just is. And I think if we see a positive trend and Liverpool do get in the top 4 or 5, they go, they don't have to go and win a trophy. I don't think it's just the biggest thing for me. It's not even necessarily outcomes. I think if the underlying stuff really starts to improve towards the end of the season and we see a real upward trend, you can tell the story of the season to yourself. And I think FSG and Richard Hughes will tell the story of the season to themselves, which is it was a bad start because of all these mitigating factors, and we started to see a recovery towards the end, and that can be our springboard to next season. So, and then you will go into next season with Arne Slot as the manager. But as I say, if they lose a load of games and they play poorly between now and the end of the season, nothing is settled. Nothing is settled. So let's just see what happens. It's like I can't say that enough. And I think sometimes people are trying to assign views to me when because when Liverpool get a defeat, I might use a negative headline for a YouTube video. I might use a positive one if they win. Obviously, that's the nature of the game. But I think I've been pretty consistent in saying that, let's see what happens. Let's just see what happens, and let's see where the trends go and what the underlying stuff looks like and what the results and the outcomes look like, and then make a big judgment at the end of the season. It's very easy to do that. And I hope, and I really hope it continues positively, by the way, I really do. But nobody needs to nail the colours to the mast yet in terms of what's going to happen, and nothing that is being said behind the scenes will tell you that it's absolutely nailed on what's going to happen, because it just isn't. Like football's crazy, and they could lose the next 15 games and then it's like a totally different conversation. So let's see.
It's mad, isn't it? Like literally a week ago, we sat here after City and said Liverpool played well for about half an hour in a 100-minute game, but probably City deserved it. We looked to the next few and saying Sunderland unbeaten at home. That's going to be a nightmare game. Can't predict really a win. We're lying if we think that's the case. FA Cup could be anything. And yet look what that's been. But then again, that doesn't mean that we can now just go, they're going to batter Forest, roll into West Ham, because you don't have the. This does feel like a swing team a little bit this season, doesn't it? Anything they could serve up.
But the thing is, because they win the last 2, then you're able to start drawing a longer line there of going, well, they won the last 2, and yes, they lost to City and didn't play well for enough of the game, but they beat Newcastle comfortably, they beat Karabag comfortably. Yes, before that, they got beat by Bournemouth, but then before that was the Marseille win, which is a comfortable away. So you can start to kind of build a case that it is, like I say, the 10-game trend, just track it. It's positive at the moment. But obviously, it's always subject to change, and we're going to bring in the next couple of games now as well, and then see. And if they're defeats and bad performances, then the 10-game trend starts to look bad. So it's a real kind of up and down thing. It's very, very hard to, which is why I find it maddening that people there's no point to say now, Arne Slot absolutely has to stay. No matter what happens, I'm slotting, and I will create a narrative around the games that fits that. I will interpret in the games in a way that fits with that narrative, i.e., after the Man City game, they lose it, but I'm slotting. Therefore, I think that the 30 minutes where they played well completely outweighs the 60 where they didn't. Yeah. Or if you're the other side of that and you are slot out, you do not have to start telling me that they didn't play well against Brighton, because it's absolute nonsense. They did, and they played well in a lot of recent games. So it's just so much better, I think, to kind of take the approach of like, let's just see and as I say, see each game on its merits, judge it and say that was a good game, that was a bad game, the trends are good or the bad, and just kind of keep going until the end of the season. And then, the trends, you can extend it then. When we get to May, you won't be just looking at a 10-game trend. You'll be looking at a kind of 20, 25, 30-game trend or wherever you're up to and say, do you know what? The second half of that season, in this what we can call the transitional season, we might be able to do that at the end of the season and say it began to trend positively, and we saw all the signings began to settle, the fitness started to improve, Liverpool started to look increasingly coherent and balanced between and then you say, well, do you know what? And we achieved this aim of getting in the top 4 or whatever. Do you know what? Maybe that season just what it was, and we stick with Arne Slot. Or if the opposite happens and they lose a load, you say, do you know what? There's not enough mitigation to justify this. We need to make a call on the manager. But like I say, I just don't think there's any point in kind of making a call now. Why would you? Because it's so finely balanced, and the next 2 could be defeats or they could be wins, and that really changes how things are. It just is. That's just the way it is. So it's better, in my opinion, to just kind of keep your powder dry.
And I mean, we'll see what this week brings. There's so many narratives to this one. Obviously, Forest have got the better of us a few times at Anfield for the last 2 seasons. I mean, they battered us there. They are fighting for their lives in 17th place. They're being wheeled in. They've got a new manager, Vitor Pereira, the former Wolves boss. So ahead of this on Sunday at 2:00, I mean, this is hard to predict because we don't know what Forest will be like, do we, at all?
No, and I'm really hopeful that new manager bounce isn't something that we're talking about on the Monday after the game. That would be a nightmare because Liverpool have found it tough against Forest, full stop. I mean, as you say, 2 Anfield defeats, and then obviously the game away there last season was a bit of a nightmare as well. It was a really, really tricky one. So, a little bit concerned about that, the new manager thing, and whether that will just get the players running around a bit and make them more difficult to beat, because they've got some good players as well. Elliott, Anderson, Morgan Gibbs-White, players who can really hurt you. So that is a little bit of a worry. But as I say, Liverpool are playing better. They're playing better against different styles as well. Going away to Sunderland and coping with the physicality, being able to win a football game against Brighton. We've seen a real kind of mix of styles that Liverpool are getting better at showing consistency across. So hopefully they can go there and win, but it's going to be a tough one because Forest hate Liverpool as well. So you factor all that in, and it's not an easy place to go at any time. But with a new manager and everyone given that bit of a lift, it makes it extra difficult. But equally, that makes it one way. If Liverpool come through this test, it's another huge tick in the box, isn't it? Of heading in the right direction, because it's another win on the board, which helps the league position. But it's also, they had all these things going against them in this game, and yet they went and won. So, let's hope that they can do.
You hope that they can do. I suppose this is weird. We're almost doing it in reverse, because midweek, Forest are going to Turkey, Fenerbahce on the Thursday night, and then their Sunday. Usually we're talking about Liverpool in that scenario, but we've got the week off. They've got, Turkey and a flight back. Hopefully we're not talking about Liverpool players departing to Ibiza again or Arne Slot on holiday or anything like that. But that could just suit us a little bit, actually, couldn't it?
Yeah, do you know what? I hadn't even thought about that one. They've got a big European game, so that is really helpful, and it's quite a bit of travel as well, isn't it? It's not a really close one, so that can definitely help, because I don't think Forest are a squad that's massively in a position to cope with European football. It's not an easy game by any means as well to play aside from Turkey, so that can be really, really helpful to Liverpool, really. So if they have to kind of just, if Forest come flying out the traps and try and make it difficult with the home atmosphere, and they make a really strong start, but Liverpool can ride that, you'd also think Liverpool will get a bit stronger as the game goes on, versus Forest, who will start to feel it in the legs a little bit. So fingers crossed that that's the case, and that proves to be really helpful for them.
Would be useful. I suppose in terms of looking at what we see or what we think the lineup might be against Forest, is the hope that it's gone quiet on this. They didn't get asked in the embargo or the presser. Jeremy Frimpong, are we hoping he's back for this one?
I hadn't personally heard anything about that in terms of where he's up to. Obviously, he's got another week now, so that might be helpful. So fingers crossed. Like I say, I hadn't heard anything on that. It's probably one I can do a bit of digging on today, actually, and to find out where he's up to. But that would be a nice bonus. I mean, even if he is, with it being another muscle issue, I'd be quite surprised if he started. I think they'd probably rather go. They'd prefer to go sub-appearance than back in with it. He's had so many muscle issues this season. So hopefully kind of that, I think that, if he can be back, that would be maybe how they use him. But, I wouldn't be against sort of saying to Curtis Jones, can you do us another stint at right back and going from there in this one. But it'd be an interesting selection, actually, because, there are a couple of selection decisions to make, really, because obviously you leave Gravenberch out. I think Chiesa for Ekitike is an obvious one, but you leave Gravenberch out the last one. What do you do if you want to keep Wirtz in the 10 is an interesting one. So it'd be an interesting selection. That
there are a few like that, because you think, especially away from home, does Joe Gomez come back in? He might want another proper defender back there as well. You suspect Gravenberch's going to come up in the lineup, and you think he'd make way, but does he keep Szoboszlai there? How does that work? Ekitike is surely going to come in. There's a few you just are probably a bit uncertain on for this lineup.
Yeah, Gomez is a great shout as well, because he's fit again. I thought he did really well when he came on in the game against. Where was it? What was the game before the last?
Sunderland, was it?
Yeah, and he made a sub appearance there. God Christ, it's too many games. And he made a sub appearance and he looked really bright. So, and Gomez won't let you down either. So maybe that's an option there. And again, that gives you then. I don't necessarily want Curtis Jones to come out of the team, but it does give you a midfield sub then, which is usually helpful. So, an interesting one there. And nice that Gravenberch's had a rest, by the way. So I expect that he will come straight back in, but he plays a lot of games. So that will be a nice one if he's able to do that. And do you use Wirtz off the left-hand side and kind of just try and dominate them in that way? It'll be, interesting. Really, really hard to predict at the moment.
It's not trying to end it on a negative, but other things that obviously will come into Arne Slot's psyche and the way he's thinking about it. Maybe flooding that midfield. This could be a game to play all four midfielders as a case for that. There were so many good individual performances, but it wasn't a great game for Cody Gakpo again, particularly, wasn't he? Blocked a few shots and looked just offside with the goal, but with the attack looking a bit more flowing, he kind of seemed a bit of the exception, so to speak.
Yeah, he's just not having a great season, is he? And I kind of, it's a strange one, because I think with Salah, it's so easy to assign it to age, but I just can't understand why Gomez is struggling in the way, Gakpo, is struggling in the way he is, particularly as, he signed that new contract, he's in a really good age. I wonder whether kind of the extra responsibility that's on him in the absence of Luis Diaz is something he's kind of struggling with, and they really need to kind of help him out and sign a winger this summer that means he can kind of be dipped in and out, because he's still a very, very good player, and you see him around the goal, he plays his part in that, the second goal, and but it's just his confidence looks absolutely shot. It's a tough one. He's one where if they did drop him, you couldn't really say it was a poor decision, or you couldn't really feel it was harsh on him, because he's just not having the best of seasons. And sometimes he's better as a sub as well, coming into a game that's a little bit open to kind of finish it off. So maybe that might just suit him and maybe get his confidence back a little bit. And as you say, kind of to move Wirtz to the left-hand side from time to time in a tough away game, I'm never against that, really. So maybe this is the time to do it, really.
Will be fascinating to see. Arne Slot has got a lot of decisions to make. Will Jeremy Frimpong be back and available for this? We've got to find out. But it's been a positive week. Let's hope we keep it going if Liverpool are going to enjoy any success before the end of the season. All it leaves me to say is ever, for the time, the insight, and for answering all the questions, David, it is massively appreciated.
Thanks for having me.
And ladies and gents, that was another Media Matters for Anfield.